Messing around. Had too much coffee.
Oh, okay. Fortunately, the
Caffeinated.
electric razor was plugged in, and we'll leave the camera at a little bit of a distance, so maybe that will work.
The co-eds are gonna, when this goes to air, co-eds are gonna call in and say, "What's up with Larry? Is he
Oh, yeah.
okay?"
Oh, well, then here, just a second.
I gotta get me one of those, baby. That's
Just in
hilarious.
case there was any doubt, okay.
Most Canadians don't even know this is happening because it's not being reported on Canadian news. But thank you for coming on. You were
Oh,
the
you
first
bet.
guy
And
I
at
thought
the
of.
moment, the interesting thing is at the moment, it's almost an entirely a U.S. base phenomena,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not just U.S., Germany, England, somebody is targeting American military bases
Okay, here we go.
internationally.
Showtime. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
Very important show tonight. We're going to be looking at the drones. Yeah, yeah. Um, Phenomena. I don't know how else to describe it. So right away, I thought of who better than Larry Hancock to come on the show. As you know, he's been here before with his book Unidentified, and it's a must-have for anybody interested in this information. Now, I got to tell you something about Larry. Larry is a legendary author investigator. He does JFK, he does national security. There's not much he doesn't investigate and let us know the truths behind it. So tonight we are going to look at the drone thing and figure out what the heck is going on here. Um, as I was just telling Larry, not many Canadians know about this. It's not being reported much in Canadian news because, of course, we're not being whatever. There's no drones flying over. Go figure. So let me just read this from CBS today, December 14th. This is impromptu, folks. As you can see, I'm all dressed up, ready to go. So if my hair is out of shape, too bad. December 14th, 2024. CBS reports a large number of mysterious drones have been reported flying over parts of New Jersey and the East Coast in recent weeks, sparking speculation and concern who sent them and why. Well, no kidding, right? Unprotected airspace. Not a good thing for the United States or any other sovereign nation. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy wrote to President Joe Biden asking for answers. New Jersey's new Senator Andy Kim spent Thursday night on a drone hunt in rural North Jersey. This is the phenomenon. It's making people nervous. Let's put it that way. The FBI is among several agencies investigating. So that's where it's escalated to, which makes perfect sense when you've got unidentified drones, UFO, whatever they are, UFOs are unidentified objects coming into your airspace. You can't protect that airspace. This is a national security issue. December 12th, 2024, just a few days ago, a video archived circulated on X with the poster claiming it showed a drone spraying a substance. This has since been debunked by Snopes, by the way, folks. Larry Hancock is a legendary investigative author. He's no nonsense, the least hysterical and most grounded guy I know. That's why I turned to him tonight. This is an impromptu show. He has an incredible book out where he examines the lore, the myths, and most importantly, the facts surrounding the UFO phenomena. It is simply a must have for anyone who seeks more knowledge about this subject matter. And get prepared in advance when you read this book for some really, really shocking revelations, as I was, because I said Larry's the most grounded person I know. Well, wait for the revelations he comes up with. Larry, what the hell is going on? Now, there's rumors it's the Russians, it's the Chinese probing, they are extraterrestrial. The only thing I can guarantee, they're not Canadian because there's no hockey sticks or hockey pucks attached to any of these things. So it's not us, folks. I can guarantee that. What's going on, Larry?
I think we can certify your innocence in this one. But okay, that's good. Actually, this is really just an extension of something that started 3 to 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
the first occurrence of this that we really became serious and looking at it from a national security standpoint, as you said, we had a Navy task group operating off San Diego, and the way that normally they do it's a pre-deployment exercise. They go to sea, they assemble, they run through various operational practices, air defense practices. Well, while this was going on, several ships in that group were essentially approached and shadowed by drones. And when I say
Oh,
drones, I mean a drone swarm, not one drone, a dozen drones, 20 drones. So what we're really
this
talking
was
about
not in
here,
international waters. This was in
they
American.
were in U.S. waters. Yeah. Uh, and they were uh, actually we've only learned about this after the fact, but it has been investigated. There have been freedom of information inquiries, that sort of thing. The probably the frightening thing about it is that we know at the time it was serious enough that Navy personnel actually deployed anti-drone jammers. Now, even drone jamming 3 years ago was nothing like it is now after the experiences that we've seen in Ukraine uh, with Russia. It's a different world now, but they deployed what they had available, and it did no good whatsoever. They were unable to jam them. So a lot of speculation was that they were not actually being controlled remotely by radio, that possibly they were satellite controlled. And obviously, that means a major national security adversary, not kids with, you know, remotes. Um, the I'm not sure that it's been released at the time, but we've seen enough to know that the Navy was certainly suspicious that the drones might have been operated off a Chinese registered ship.
Oh, now you're scaring me.
Um, and one of the problems, I mean, of course, is there are no laws per se. No hostile action was committed. No, it's just there are no laws against this per se. And this is something that's still plaguing the whole situation right now, is it's wrapped up in a whole series of problems about who has responsibility from a security standpoint. In the US, each domestically and even overseas, each base has its own security obligation and is supposed to be able to defend itself. So matters are made a lot worse because that is if something is within your security zone, you have some authorities, but you don't have authorities to defend yourself unless you're being attacked. Uh, so if there's
Rules
no
of engagement.
hostile action, everybody gets wrapped up in it. What's happening right now is the Department of Defense actually within the last week or so has issued a broad response to this, talking about coordinating, not just leave it in responsible to individual bases, wrapping the whole thing up to Northcom, which is the military command that covers both the U.S. and Canada, by the way. It's a joint command with the U.S. and Canada.
Is that
Uh,
NORAD or is it different than NORAD?
well, NORCOM is actually the military command. NORAD is the air defense command. So
Oh,
while NORAD might be
just a different.
monitoring a threat, if it's determined to be a threat per se, or somebody needs to engage, it's handed off to NORCOM to do that because they have military assets and NORAD doesn't. NORCOM is just one of the global commands around the world that actually has resources.
Okay.
So that's all in process. It's pretty clear that either we didn't think that this was going to continue at this level, or frankly, we didn't prepare for it. I think that's what the furor is in Congress right now, is that, you know, we're worried about the Chinese, but not in the same context that, this may imply. Just to give a little bit more backstory, the other thing that actually is frightening in this regard is that they're about about the same time as the incident off San Diego. Um, there was a major incident in Colorado, Montana, basically in the territory adjacent to our ICBM systems.
Oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah.
Jeez. I remember last time we spoke about this. Yeah.
Which also, uh, not to dial it in too much, but also about that time we learned and became very concerned that the wireless technology that was going into a lot of the telephone systems that had been sourced out of China had the ability to collect a lot of information that, you know, basically we wouldn't want disclosed off of our bases.
Mhm.
So again, sensitivity heightened towards China by both those things. Now let's come forward and look at what is happening now. That the other main concern from a national security standpoint is that all of these incidents now before right now it is the most concentrated on the East Coast, but we have had other incidents over air bases in Arizona. This is not restricted just to here and now in New Jersey and the Northeast. It's just proliferating, it appears. But in general, up to now, it's all been associated with military operations, military bases, not just in the US. In the last 3 months, the same swarms have been reported over bases in England and Germany.
Oh, this is news to me
So,
completely.
so this is an international security concern. Uh, Now, who's doing? I think what we have to differentiate when we're talking about here is there's a real difference in one drone or two drones, uh, you know, flying over a base at a a few hundred feet or a couple of thousand feet and going off. Yeah, yeah, those have been reported, but that's not what we're really talking about here that is of concern. The ones that are of concern are swarms of 5 to 20 that appear to be operating in a coordinated fashion.
How
Now,
big are they, Larry?
well, that's the kicker. They're not the ones that are it has ranged from the size of a general public drone, a couple feet, 3, 4 feet at most, four rotors, something like that, up to car size. Now, car size is not, that's another story entirely.
Oh, it's military for sure.
That's military. And what makes that of concern is some of them have been operating at altitudes that certainly are not, again, hobbyist type drones. Uh, some of them have been chased by police helicopters that can't keep up with them.
Oh my.
None of these have exhibited from a UFO perspective or UAP perspective what we would call truly anomalous behavior. They're anomalous for drones, yes. Anomalous for our classic UFOs that can accelerate 100 Gs. No, not that.
Now, from what I understand, to try and unpack this phenomena, if you will, there's rumors that there's no heat signature. There's rumors that there's no noise attached with them, no lights. Um, do you feel that these are probes? Are any of those things true, or are
Yeah,
we getting
those
away
one
from
of the
it?
problems is I've seen a number of drones myself,
Hmm.
even out here in the country, but we knew
Larry
what they
is
were.
ex Air Force, by the way, folks, and thank you again for your service. Yeah,
Well,
sorry, I
and
should have
and
mentioned
the
that.
thing is, even from observing those, we didn't. I've seen a drone hovering at maybe 300 feet over a fairgrounds, let's say. We didn't know it was there until it turns on its lights.
Oh my. Okay.
No motor noise, and then when it turns off its lights, it disappears. And that sucker maneuvers like you would not believe. 90 degree. I mean, it is anomalous in that regard, but that was a hobbyist run
I was going
light
to ask
enough
you.
to do
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But we did not know it was there until the lights came on. But of course, those are remotely controlled. So it can look a lot spookier than it really is, even with hobbyist drones. And those motors are electric, very quiet. I wouldn't expect, if I hear a drone, then that is a really kind of heavy lift thing. That's not a typical hobbyist drone. And there have been reports of that. So yeah, there's some of that going on. Clearly, I think we're talking about two things that are here happening here. We could be talking about hobbyist level drones that are being operated in coordinated function for propaganda purposes, military. I mean, if you think about it, you don't want, if you're collecting information, the last thing you want to do is be this visible and spook this much attention. Okay. So none of that makes sense. If I can fly one of these suckers in at 300 feet without lights and take all the infrared pictures I want at night, that's what I do. But somebody is doing this to send a message, or way back in 1952, when we had a UFO wave over the entire East Coast, the real military worry at the time was, and this kind of interesting, was not that the concern was that the noise would ramp up so much that we couldn't detect a real threat from the noise. This is ramping up the noise extremely. It also desensitized people. Like, okay, people won't report something because now we've all seen 100 drones and who cares?
The boy who
So,
called wolf,
in
who cried wolf.
1952, that was a concern. Like this will hurt our defenses because it becomes too common. Now, okay, not is that what we're looking at? All I can say is clearly they're making themselves visible. They're in a way that we wouldn't expect they would. So what's going on here? If one of the interesting things, and this is pure speculation, is that it may be a mix. It may be a mix of somebody flying a lot of hobbyist drones to conceal a few very serious drones that are collecting real high level signals intelligence, not pictures, but signals intelligence, and are performing what we call ferreting. Ferreting in the military world is a matter of sending something over your potential adversary to look at how quickly they respond. Can they detect you? And by the way, while you're doing that, monitor all their communications. So how quickly can they respond? How can they detect you? And what happens when they do? So if you're ready to conduct a real preemptive attack, you know what you're facing.
Hmm.
So we be looking at ferreting? Maybe. Certainly over the Navy unit, that would be a real concern that it was ferreting. Can they deal with this? If we send in a drone swarm of weaponized drones, what happens? Well, we've seen that now in the Black Sea.
Hmm.
That Navy task force would have been gone.
Yep.
Um, that's the scary part. Now, it's not that we aren't taking those things seriously. And but the other component of all this is if I had the ability to actually do deep internet probing, I would be looking to see if there were some drone operator groups
Hmm.
that are doing this for kicks. That's, pranking. Pranking is absolutely not unknown. So is that part of the mix?
Like a hacker group would do
Yeah,
to a computer. Okay. Mhm.
exactly. I'm really cool with my drone. I've got a really good one, and you do too. And we figured out how to network 10 of these, which is very, very feasible. Okay. They can talk with each other. We can network. I mean, everybody saw uh, the Winter Olympics the last time with the
Yeah.
big drone formation that made a shape.
Hmm.
That's happening. Yeah, it's very sophisticated stuff. So are they just showing how good they are? So are we looking at a mix of stuff? I will say two pieces of evidence. One, in some of the incidents, oh, like a month ago, uh, police and base security did trace drones operating over bases that would fly off out of the security area and land in a housing complex. Now, they didn't have the arrangements in place to get out there and bust anybody. But then again, the law is unclear as to what they would have, you know, what they would have busted them for.
Mhm.
That's all. The stories you read are all about what the agencies are now doing to interconnect to deal with this problem. FAA, I mean, let's face it. What happens if you know, I try to down one of these drones and it turned out to be a private aircraft?
That's the
Uh,
scary part. Yeah.
that's a scary part. So now there, a lot of these places don't have the kind of security areas that we have during the Cold War. That all went away. You
Mhm.
know, should it come back? Hate to say that, but I think considering how dangerous drones can be, and we've all seen that now, um, I would say we're probably more at risk from weaponized drones than we were from Soviet long-range bombers.
Well, your reference to Ukraine and the Soviet War, the Russian War is a really good one. And we can see the benefits of drones over sending in military manned aircraft. I mean, you could lose a drone and it doesn't cost anywhere near the aircraft or the training of that human being either.
And you can saturate it. And
Yeah.
one of the the other bad things about that, and not to be, but
Understood.
drones are deniable. If I wanted to stage an attack with a set of drones
Yeah.
and take out two or three ships, this or that, it's kind of a, you know, they know what they're saying. We know what they're saying. This is an illustration. How do we trace back that drone? It's gone. We didn't track it coming in. We have no, it's very dangerous from that perspective. And to a certain extent, that incident with the Navy task group certainly feels like that. It's kind of like, okay, we understand what you could do. Does that affect our operations? Does that affect are we going to hold back when we might not otherwise have held back? Whatever.
There seems to be an
Yeah.
escalation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I know it was happening prior to, but once the election was over, there seems to be an escalation now. Do you think that may have something to do with it? The American election, folks. Mr. Trump was elected president.
I I don't see that as being political. If anything, um, the timing wise, there is, if it could be tied to China,
Hmm.
you know, the president-elect Trump obviously does have an issue with China, you
Hmm.
know.
North
Is
Korea.
that going to give him, is that going to make him more sensitized? I don't know. I feel like it's more, in a sense, it's more of an object lesson to us of how vulnerable we are,
Hmm.
regardless of any administration.
We can get to
Uh,
you.
and so who would want to project that vulnerability? There are two or three potential adversaries
Adversaries.
that would
Yeah.
want to project that. But I don't know that it has to do particularly with any given administration, but certainly uh, if it might condition us, are we going to intervene in Taiwan? Uh, well, no, we now know we're a lot more vulnerable than we did 2 months ago. Will that affect the decision? Somebody's going to have to give a advice on that to whoever's president. So could it affect our foreign policy? Sure, but I think that's administration independent almost.
Okay. Could this, we both lived through 9/11. Could this be a precursor to a terrorist attack? I'm thinking it's so easy, and I don't want to scare anybody here or give anybody ideas, but it's so easy to send a drone over with some nuclear waste, even a minimal amount, but you send en masse 6, 7, 8 drones across a city that's as concentrated as Manhattan, that's going to
It
cause a lot of damage.
it could be if it the thing is it's kind of like what we just talked about. If
Yeah.
I really wanted to collect intelligence, I would do it covertly. I mean, this and you
Overtly,
yeah.
completely
Yeah,
overtly.
this is way too overt. You
Yeah.
wouldn't know that I was doing this until, as you said, I had laid down nuclear material across all of New York City.
Hmm.
I'm not going to give you any advance. This is almost like an advance warning. I mean, some of the speculation has been that there's someone doing this, whether it's a private military contract or whatever, just to get across the message of what the vulnerability is and how we should respond. Uh, it doesn't feel like that, but what it does feel like, and again, I wouldn't. Uh, there are there are such things as exercises to demonstrate vulnerability. There are actually teams that existed again during the Cold War. I don't know if they still exist. I can say as far back as the Obama administration, when I wrote Surprise Attack and went into
Hmm.
a lot of these things, there were teams that were simulated attacks, and there were exercises and national defense exercises, and the president was supposed to participate in those, and so on and so forth. And it was all, I don't really know if that is still going on or not. I haven't looked at it.
Would they be as overt then as they are now? It seems to me by being overt, that's part of a
No,
terrorist.
that
No, I'm wrong.
they wouldn't be. No, they
Okay.
would have been there. It's almost like war gaming
Yes.
in those cases.
Yeah.
Those you war game those potential threats. So
Hmm.
this doesn't feel like that. But what it does feel like, and if you look at what the net result of the whole thing is, the net result is stimulating the system to
Mm.
interconnect. And by that, I mean the military, the FAA, NORAD, NORCOM, all of these independent agencies have to get their act together to deal with this, especially Homeland Security and FAA, which are should be part of the mix, but haven't been. This is forcing the issue because now there are legislators asking the question, and people are being. Before it was one news story went away, another news story went away. This one finally penetrated to Congress, which it's kind of amazing that it just penetrated to Congress, but it did. So to me, to kind of reverse engineer it,
Sure.
what did it really, what happened? It actually is forcing us to respond in an integrated fashion to these threats. You mentioned 9/11.
Hmm.
One of the real problems about 9/11 was that kind of integration did not happen before 9/11. There was no FAA, again, wrote about it's pitiful. No integration between FAA, NORAD, military command, and there were no authorities. There were no authorities in evidence to shoot down an aircraft. Right now, there are no authorities in evidence to shoot down a drone until the first attack occurs. Okay, soon as that happens, then you're good. But obviously, in this case, if they were weaponized drones, it wouldn't just be four airplanes. It would be
Yeah.
drone swarms.
You
Uh,
had mentioned 1952, and I know there were several quote unquote UFOs flying over Washington, which is a no-fly zone. Has there been any, to your knowledge, little probings
well,
across
well,
the
just a
White House?
backstory on that. It's kind of in a way, 1952 is at the height of the Cold War, right?
Yep.
Okay. We're actually everyone is expecting the Soviet Union to conduct a preemptive nuclear strike by 1952, 1940. We're all expecting it, right?
Mhm.
So when the UFOs appear over the whole Northeast coast, not just Washington, D.C., but when they appear over Washington, D.C., it takes an hour and a half to get the first interceptor there.
Yeah.
It's like it sounds, does this sound familiar? Okay. Wait a
I don't
minute.
know if it would be any better now. I know they have defenses on the roof. You can see them. But I mean, if you've got something that's as small as well, I hate to say it, a car, I don't know if you could actually target that and take it down quickly.
Well, when I wrote Surprise Attack, I actually
Yeah.
went into drones at the White House
Oh, did
and
you? Okay.
suggested that the
Yeah.
Secret Service would immediately equip themselves with shotguns. I assume they've done that much at least, but you need something a little better than a shotgun for these drones. Uh, but I guess what I was getting at is
Mm.
it we were as we were unprepared, then we were prepared for a certain type of attack, a long
Right.
range attack from the Soviet Union. When something showed up right over Washington, not detected on any of our long range radars or anything else, we did not have a response. When 9/11 happened, it was something different than what we were prepared for again.
That's right. Yeah.
No response. And now we're back in the same thing. You've heard the old slogan, everybody prepares to fight the last war.
Yes, that's very
Well,
true.
that's the mode that we're getting, and our
Yeah.
defenses for the last types of attack. Now, this is so uh, obviously we'll get our act together. I know people in the services that are working on projects to deal with this. There's a huge initiative to deal with drones.
I bet.
But that is dealing with them from a military standpoint is different than the command and control structure that lets you use those weapons. Those weapons were there on 9/11, but
The command
somebody had
wasn't.
to issue an
Yeah.
order, and that it's too late by the time that happens if you're not already prepared. So, but we shouldn't. There is another thing going on here, and that is we really don't there are a lot of people going outside that don't normally go outside at night, and they don't know what normally is out there at night, whether it's lights on radar, radio towers or TV towers, or whether it's private aircraft,
Hmm.
or whether it's meteors. I mean, I've seen two headlines on, national stories that's like, no, those are meteors. There may be drones, but what you just showed me was a meteor. So they don't know what they're saying. So I have to say, when the Secretary of Defense says, that there are a whole lot of people reporting that's misidentification, it always is, because if you went out like every night, like an amateur astronomer does, you
Hmm.
know what is happening and look around, and then you might notice a drone and it was different. But now people are reporting things that are out there usually as drones,
It's
because they
funny
just
you
don't
mention
look
that
before.
because when it's really dark in the summer, certain times the International Space Station folks will fly over Kingston because Kingston's on the Great Lakes and stuff, and we all go and watch it. And if you don't know that it's the International Space Station, you're going to spook yourself like
Oh
crazy
yeah.
because it is moving so fast and it is bright because the sun's reflecting off it and stuff. But man, it's so cool to
I
see.
have a
So,
spot the station app on my PC and do that. But the other thing is, now we've got all of these satellites. There are a
yes,
lot of misidentifications
yeah, for sure.
for the Starlink.
Starlink, yeah.
Yeah, a lot
And
of
there's a
them.
whole bunch of others too. Yeah.
But so anyway, I guess there is a real. I will throw one other thing into the mix, and I think most people have missed this. I'm kind of surprised it didn't get more reporting than it did. The FBI did arrest a Chinese national boarding an aircraft with drone video footage and a drone.
Oh, I didn't know this. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah. And they also arrested a U.S. citizen of Chinese origin that had been working with them. So one of the things, and I don't want to be too hard on the security apparatus, usually you're often willing to take it uh, a shot from a PR standpoint to get back to the source. And it takes time to get back to the sources. And in the meantime, people beat you up just like they do the police and law
Sure.
enforcement in general. Like, why aren't you sharing information? Why aren't you solving this? Well, if I give you everything I know, the guys that are doing it will know it too. And I need to go up the food channel. I don't care about this guy operating the drone out of here. I want to know why he did it. Was he paid to do it? an investigation takes time, and I have no doubt that there are investigations in place at this point in time that we don't know about, and nobody should announce. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the way you operate. Sharing all the information with the public. I don't care what your local congressman says. You know, they don't you don't want them sharing it all instantly, because that if there is a bad guy actor, then you shared it with them too. And you share everything about what you know and how you collect information and what you can detect and what you can't detect. So I'm getting a little tired of Congress. There are intelligence committees set up in our Congress that are supposed to
Sorry
get
for the laugh,
information
but
from,
because we have them
right.
here, and
Yeah.
I make the same joke, Larry. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, there's aliens on Earth." I said, "No kidding. They all live in Ottawa. That's our capital, of course, where the politicians are." Yeah.
Well, yeah, and in the UAP UFO world
Yeah.
I live in, we operate a lot discussing non-human intelligence, but we don't really discuss human intelligence or any
It's
lack thereof.
non-existent, I think, sometimes. I'm sorry to make a joke of it. Speaking about Canada, several years ago now, geez, I don't know if it was during COVID, post-COVID, can't remember. There was weather balloons sent over from China. Some of them were shot down and some of them
That's two
landed.
years. Yes, right.
Is this, do you think, in your estimation, an extension of that? What took
Um,
place then? And
no, I don't. I do
okay.
think the interesting thing is, in this case, there were four objects that were shot down. Two
Hmm.
of them certainly were long-range Chinese reconnaissance balloons. And yes, that could have been a precursor to this in a way. One of the things we learned from that is that China's kind of like everybody else. The agencies that were doing that might have been doing it on their own as a day job, and the Chinese premier might not have even known it was going on. Like, okay, fine. Uh, Everybody has that problem. But there were a couple of things shot down over Canada that we know they were shot down, and there's been a tough problem with releasing information from the Canadian Armed Services.
Yes.
The
And
best I can see is it looks like one of those may actually have been a private organization weather balloon, but we don't know because they have actually that's one case of holding back information that's made things worse, because those have really helped create that mystery. Were they alien spacecraft? Because nobody will tell us. Yes, something did crash, and they won't share any information. So obviously, it's suspicious.
the
Uh,
only thing I can tell you is there's one that fell remotely, and there was a Canadian military team going to get it. And then suddenly the news just dropped off.
yeah,
Poof,
yeah,
black.
that
Everything's
was one of
quiet.
those two. Yep.
Did they get it? Did they not get it? What was in it? You know, there was no follow-up, of course, and everything just went mum.
And that has been a terrible. That's one of the reasons why this looks like 1952, because the administration, there's no doubt that the administration, the agencies have done a terrible job of managing information on this in
Mm.
terms of, letting the public know that there is an issue. Uh, there has been a total lack of communication starting right back then on what might be going on with balloons and drones, and like the whole thing that came out of the stuff in Colorado and Montana that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There was never any solution. Never any solution. Nobody offered an answer, and that can't help make you look. It it certainly raises sensitivities, and who knows? Was that intentional? To undermine confidence? Well, whether it was intentional or not, it certainly did it.
Well, if you can't protect your airspace, right? I mean, or your sea space,
Yeah. Well, you
yeah,
might translate this into a message that says, if you can't protect the airspace over your ICBM sites, why are you pestering us about the South China Sea?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
okay, you got your worries, we got ours. Let's okay.
Would do you think China would hire actors, if you will, other
Oh,
actors.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way this game is played by
yeah.
everybody. Everybody uses surrogates. Everybody wants
Cutouts, as you
deniability.
say. Yeah,
Everybody hires somebody to do it. They hire somebody who hires somebody else. And in the end,
deniability.
to some extent, it's a half a dozen kids that somebody found over the internet that are doing it for fun. And, they don't even know that one of them is, you know, behind this and egging them on. Oh, it's just like, oh,
Oh,
Charlie lives in the next block, but I've never met him, but he said we ought to do this.
oy vey. Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you is, where does the government go from here? How do they protect the? I'm trying to think. It's funny. LeMay popped in my head 2 seconds ago, and I was trying to think, what would LeMay do? Well, I think he'd probably attack China.
Well, I think what you will do is you'll absolutely see point defense systems, and they are being installed as we speak. I know
Hmm.
that. Point defense systems that are um, jamming devices that are going in to pretty much all the bases right now. Um, but the next step beyond that, LeMay would have issued directives, and they could be issued directives that literally made that airspace over the base secure to the extent that we will attack anything. LeMay's version, if you had flown over a SAC base, you would be warned, you would be warned not to land. So you would be intercepted, you would be escorted. That would be a next step because right now we're not doing that. The military is not doing any intercepts, but think about it. What does that really mean? Do we have helicopters stationed at every military base? And where do we get the personnel and aircraft to do that? If jamming is not enough, what's the next step? Well, yeah, we do have point defense missile systems. We also have attack drones. I would not be surprised. So the next step is that should happen, that could happen, but it's going to require the new administration to support it, is to declare security zones that are real security zones. As you say, like LeMay, it, if it's kind of like the security zone we have over the DC now.
Hmm.
If we can't talk to you and you don't respond, we're authorized to take you down. And that's not in place yet. So I think that's going to be part of the discussion. Um, so that'll be interesting. Obviously, that can lead to bad things, but that's where it's going to be in the lap of the new administration. The new administration, that's going to be a real hot button day one for them, the way this is starting out.
Couple of things. The International Space Station. China has one. This seems to coincide with that as well. Do you think they could be pulling, I hate to say it, strings from
Well,
there?
they're putting up their own version of Starlink. So is
Yeah.
Russia. So absolutely, not just the space station, but that's why the first thought was that these are being controlled. They're not only being, they might even be controlled locally, but they're being directed from space. They're or otherwise. It can be a spot beam on the drone out of space that you can't interfere with because you're gonna have to the amount of mass jamming that you're going to do is so massive it will take down your GPS systems too.
This is an issue,
That's
without question.
so yeah, absolutely. Certainly there's that they now have the capability to do that.
And if they go to the moon again, China, and they're making inroads on that, and they put a base up there, it's
Yeah.
every time technology takes a step forward, there seems to be a leap in the military capabilities associated with that as well. And it makes you wonder sometime, because we seem to be so suicidal, this species of man. Every time something gets made, we use it and say, "Oh, we never used the nuclear." Well, we did, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. So they have been used. So is this the next step forward?
Now it's almost worse though, because I was listening to the Russian well, former president today talking about the fact, well, we don't have to use nukes. We can attack NATO with our new hypersonic missiles.
Yes,
So we
yes.
don't have to use nukes.
Can you
It's
tell the
almost
folks
like
what they are? Because a lot of people may not be aware, if you
um,
don't mind, Larry.
their hypersonic missiles are literally, something that's going at Mach 7 or 8. And the point is they can fly. They don't even have to be orbital. They can fly at very low profiles. They're very maneuverable, and they're what are referred to as first strike or preemptive weapons because you really have a very hard time seeing them coming.
Yeah, till they're there.
It's until they're there, and uh, it almost makes nuclear look good. I mean, because you could deal with ballistic missiles, you could see them coming, you had time to do something about it with these hypersonic weapons, and then somebody can say, you can't, there's no mutual assured destruction. You're going to have to respond to it one strike at a time. You know, um, we're deploying them. We've certainly made no claim that we're going to use them. Russia is just constantly talking about the fact that they will use them, um, and are using them against Ukraine, as a matter
Mhm.
of fact. But there's certainly a new arms race. There's no doubt about that.
There's no question about that. I just want to jump back to 9/11 and then we'll start to wrap up. I had interviewed Colonel Robert Darling, who was in the White House bunker that day, sitting beside Cheney and Rice. And I said, so? And he said, well, the communications were a bloody mess. And this is in, 9/11. Um, so they were no better, apparently, since 1963 when Kennedy was assassinated. There was brownouts everywhere. They were having the same issues, same damn issues during 9/11. And I thought, wow, this is incredible.
That's what I did in Surprise Attack in the book. One of
Yeah.
the reasons I did in the book was I wanted to determine for myself, did it get any better? So what happened after the Kennedy assassination? What happened after the Gulf of Tonkin?
Hmm.
What happened after the Liberty? What happened about after the Reagan shooting? All the way up to 9/11. Does it ever get any better? The answer is no, it never got any better. Community, no matter how much capability you had, it's kind of like the Liberty off Israel, hours and hours the ship was under attack and we did nothing. Even though people knew about it almost immediately with at Sink Europe, the Commander-in-Chief Europe knew about it. We had an NSA aircraft operating over Italy. They knew about it, but getting anything to really happen, it doesn't get any better, which is why that is, I say, that's right now, I think, where the announcements I've seen this week is that they're going to try to get their act together
Mm.
uh, in terms of communication between the bases and NORAD and ORCOM. But again, it reminds me back in the UFO world, back about 1975. Uh, I've written in Unidentified about an incident where we had we had UFO intrusions
Yes,
at
we talked
six
about
of our
this.
ICBM
Yes,
bases, including a Canadian Air Force base.
went right
They
down.
come right
North Bay, by
down
the way, folks, as I point north. Sorry
and
about
and
that.
hover like 20 feet over an atomic warhead bunker. And the base um, messages NORAD and says, help, we need help. And, could you send us a fighter at least? And NORAD says, well, no, they're not available. Good. It's like they're not available. Good
We're
luck.
all flying over the Arctic. A lot of
But
good
but
that
even
does
even
us,
then, it's
right?
kind of reflects what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
This is a
We're
SAC
making
base.
some fun, but you're
This
right.
is Strategic Air Command. These guys are notorious for having no sense of humor. The air police that are guarding that bunker are fully armed. Does anybody shoot at the thing? No. And you almost have to ask, like, Should they have shot? Should they not have shot? Would you not have expect them to have shot at it? What if it was a civilian helicopter and they shot it down? It's going to look bad on your, but they chose not to engage. Not engaging, it's like the other guy has got to attack first, then get
Yeah.
to engage. But of course, then it's too late.
It's too late. Rules of engagement, right? And then if you, like you said, if you do engage and it turns out to be non-threatening, then of
Yeah,
course you're up for charges. Just to let you know, too, folks, about the comms in Afghanistan, our first four casualties in the Canadian Army were a friendly fire from Americans. Now, they didn't do it on purpose. Let me clarify that. I'm just trying to make a point of how screwed up comms can get in a combat situation. They
yeah.
were wearing helmets with little things shining. The guys in the aircraft thought they were being shot at, so they opened fire. Took a half hour. The message came in, no, they're Canadians, they're friendly. They were dead. So this stuff goes on all the
It's
time. It
easy to
has,
have. Let's
oh,
look at the drones. I mean,
yeah.
how easy would it be if somebody at the base started firing and it proved to be a police helicopter?
Could you imagine, and then it crashes in a civilian zone and the casualty fallout from that. And,
Probably a military housing complex right outside the base. Yeah.
oh, yeah. So to be
Yep.
continued without question. I
Yep.
want to thank Larry so much for coming on. I was sitting at Starbucks sucking back coffee as I always do. That didn't show up, did it? It's a screen,
Yeah.
folks. Yeah. And but I'm real most of the time. And uh, I got a phone call from a friend. Can you do something on this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to reach out to Larry because he's the most knowledgeable guy I know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, and most reasonable. Now, I had said at the beginning of the show, you're going to find some shocking stuff. Now, you had told me in our last show we did together about 95% of the stuff can be accounted for. The other 5%, not so much. Do you still follow with that?
Oh, absolutely. The
Oh
other,
my God.
yeah, actually, I happen to be working with a group called the Scientific Coalition for the Study
Oh,
of
what's this?
Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena. My team, which basically in the book Unidentified,
Right.
in part of the book, I used a procedure called indications analysis to take a look at the reports that were being made during this period of time that the book covers. And essentially in the book, it's like, okay, let's look at this and ask one question, was it the Soviets? And the answer to the question was no, it wasn't the Soviets. It was an intelligent actor and it was anomalous. And okay, so our team has been looking at in a much more detailed perspective. And we've actually issued three papers, which are available on the SCU website, uh, that analyze UA, UFO activity over military installations during 1945 to 1975, and in the military domain and the public domain.
Wow.
Obvious that there is
Can you give the
organized.
URL for that?
Sure. Can I email it to you?
Sure,
It's
absolutely.
lengthy. Uh, yeah, I should probably do that. It's lengthy. But so it's clear there was the interesting thing, there was a focused attention on the atomic warfare as the complex developed. It started on the development bases, and then it shifted to the weapons assembly bases, then it shifted to the deployment bases for deployed. Very structured. I mean, there is intelligent design behind this. And interestingly enough, then after that point in time, it shifted to the public domain. But long story there, but we've been publishing a series of papers on that, and it certainly looks like there's every indication of a non-human intelligence and intelligent work, at least some sort of
Non-human
surveys.
intelligence, folks. Did you?
Yes.
Non-human
Oh, wait.
intelligence. And we're not
I didn't
talking
say
AI,
alien, I
by the
said
way.
non-human. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I'm turning the lights off tonight.
But Brent,
Holy moly.
I'm actually learned about him than this drone thing because everything that we see says that they were here to do it of our military capabilities, but that's all. It's strict, and this started after our use of the bombs in Japan.
Yes. Yeah.
It's clear. It's clearly a result of something we did by ourselves to ourselves. Okay. And then when it turns to the public domain, again, it looks like a study. Okay, the military guys took a look, they did their assessment, they went home and said, okay, now let the cultural anthropology grad students, we don't understand it. Maybe figure them out. We can't, but so that actually appears at this point much less threatening than whoever's doing what we're seeing here. Much less scared of them than us.
Boy, oh boy. Thank you so much, Larry. There you have it, folks. I hope this answers more questions. I'm sure you will have some. Put them in the comments, and we'll get Larry back on, hopefully, to answer them and stuff. Larry's going to be back on in a few weeks, also, folks, because he's got a brand new book out on Oswald, and I am so anxious to read this because it's going to be, as everything with Larry, as you see the book scroll across the television, impeccable, impeccable. Number one guy to go to all the time. And I thank him so much for being here and helping us out with this.
Brent, it's a 400-page book with 433 endnotes in it. So that kind of, I hate endnotes so bad. And they're all links. It's like they have to work. Oh, yeah.
It's impeccable.
Anyway,
Absolutely. But looking so forward to getting it. And I know it's on its way. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much. If I don't speak to you before Christmas, hopefully I will, but Merry Christmas to you and yours. God bless. And just have a wonderful time. And thank you so much again, Larry.
same to you. I enjoyed it. Always enjoy being on. I'll send you the link to those papers.
Love having you on, my friend. I'm Brent Holland from the Brent Holland Show. Take care of each other out there, folks. It's Christmas time. Happy Hanukkah for those that celebrate Hanukkah. Assalamu alaikum for those who are of the Muslim faith. And I always make the same joke. I was raised as a Christian. My mom taught Sunday school. I was with a Jewish woman who was worked at a Chabad, which is a very religious school, and I studied Torah. And then I was married to a Shia for 10 years, a Muslim. So I got them all covered when I get up there. And even if it's Buddha, folks, I got that covered too. We'll see you next time.